I didn't mean to stay with Ethan this long. It was supposed to be a week, maybe 2. Just until I found something, after my last roommate pulled the ultimate freak move and bailed on the lease with 0 warning. I had a job, sure, but I wasn't exactly rolling in cash. And the idea of couch surfing through Craigslist strangers gave me hives. So when Ethan said, "Dude, just stay here for a bit," I said yes. We weren't close. More like convenient friends. We'd known each other back in high school, had a few mutuals in college, and every now and then we'd run into each other at the same dive bars in Brooklyn. Ethan was one of those guys everyone liked. Easygoing, always had a hoodie on, that chill energy that made you want to tell him things you probably shouldn't. And, of course, he was straight. He had the flannel shirts, the occasional ex-girlfriend drama, the loud opinions about craft beer, the whole thing. But he also had a surprisingly nice couch. "You can crash here as long as you need," he said, tossing me a spare key. "But if you start eating my peanut butter with a spoon, I'm kicking you out." Deal. The first couple of nights were fine. He worked late, I freelanced from his kitchen table. We gave each other space. There were a few beers, a couple of dumb movie marathons. I kept it cool, made my bed on the couch, didn't overstep. The arrangement was casual, comfortable. Until it wasn't. It happened on a Saturday night. We'd been watching this old kung fu flick. Ethan's idea, and somewhere between the second bottle of wine and the third bowl of popcorn, one passed out. Just dropped into sleep like a stone, still in my hoodie, half upright on the cushions. When I opened my eyes, it was morning, and I was not on the couch. I was in Ethan's bed. At first, I thought I was dreaming. His sheets smelled like laundry detergent and skin. The room was quiet, heavy with that early morning stillness. It took me a second to realize where I was, and another to notice. He was right next to me, asleep. Not across the room, not on the floor, right there. One pillow, one blanket, one very warm, very real Ethan, lying just a few inches away, breathing softly like this, was completely normal. And his arm, Jesus. His arm was draped across my waist. That's when my heart started doing stupid things. I didn't move at first. Just lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out how the hell I got here. I wasn't drunk. Not really. Tipsy maybe. But not blackout. I definitely didn't climb into his bed myself. So how did? Ethan stirred. His fingers twitched against my stomach, and I flinched. He blinked awake slowly, turned his head, and looked at me with this sleepy, confused softness that made it worse somehow. "Oh," he said, his voice low. "Shit. I forgot." "You forgot?" I asked, barely above a whisper. He sat up slightly, rubbing his face with one hand. "You fell asleep on the couch. I guess I don't know, I moved you?" I stared at him. "You moved me? Into your bed?" "Yeah," he said, like that explained it. "You looked uncomfortable. I thought you'd sleep better here." "So you carried me?" "No," he said quickly. "Not, like, carried. I kind of guided you." "Guided me?" "You were half asleep," he added. "It's not a big deal." I was about to argue, but the thing is, I had felt hands. I remembered it now, kind of. Something soft brushing my arm. A low voice. A moment when I stirred but didn't wake. It was hazy, dreamlike. Except it wasn't a dream. And that didn't explain his arm around me. Or the way he didn't seem in a rush to move. "Sorry if it's weird," he said. I woke up like this too and thought, crap, maybe that was a bad call. "No, it's..." I hesitated. "It's fine." We both sat in silence for a moment. I couldn't stop thinking about the way his hand had been on my waist. How his fingers had curled slightly, not just resting, but holding. "I guess I'll make coffee," he said finally, swinging his legs out of bed. "Yeah," I said, still lying there, the warmth of the sheets clinging to me. Good idea. He left the room. I heard him open a cabinet, the clink of mugs. Everything sounded too normal, too casual, like this was just a regular Sunday morning. But it wasn't. Because as I sat up and looked around his room, one thought kept circling in my head. If it was just sleepwalking or convenience or some weird half-asleep decision. Why did it feel so good to wake up like that? The smell of coffee pulled me out of my tangled thoughts. Ethan was back in the room, holding 2 mugs, his usual calm vibe replaced by something a little more tentative. "Here," he said, handing me one. "Black, no sugar. You haven't changed since high school." I took the mug, feeling the warmth seep into my fingers. For a moment, I just stared at him, trying to read what was behind those familiar brown eyes. "You really didn't mean to wake me?" I asked, finally breaking the silence. He shrugged, sitting on the edge of the bed, careful not to touch me. "I guess not. You looked like you were freezing on the couch, and I figured this was better." I nodded, though I wasn't sure what to say. I kept glancing at the spot where his arm had been, where it lingered just a moment too long for. Friendship. There was something different in the air now. Something that hadn't been there before. A shift that made the easy jokes and casual hangouts feel charged. So, I started, swirling the coffee in my mug. "You're okay with this? Like having me here all the time?" His lips twitched, a small smile. "Yeah. It's nice, actually. Feels like having a roommate who doesn't steal your food." I laughed, the sound a little too nervous, and Ethan's smile deepened. "Okay, serious question," I said, setting down the mug. "Why did you, move me?" He hesitated, biting his lip. "I don't know. I guess I just wanted to be close. Didn't want you to feel alone, even if you were asleep." I blinked, trying not to overthink it. Close? Us? What was that supposed to mean? "Did you think about it after? When you woke up?" I asked, heart pounding. He shrugged, looking away. "Yeah. I thought about it a lot, more than I expected." "Ethan?" My voice was barely a whisper. He met my gaze, his expression serious now, more vulnerable than I'd ever seen. "Look, I know I'm straight. Always have been, but I don't know what this is between us. I just know I don't want it to be weird." "Neither do I." We sat there for a moment, the morning light casting soft shadows across the room. Then Ethan stood, walking over to the window, looking out, but not really seeing. "I'm glad you're here," he said quietly. "More than I thought I would be." My chest tightened. "Me too," I admitted. It was the first time I'd said it out loud, but it felt right. And as I took another sip of coffee, I realized maybe this accidental night on his bed wasn't a mistake. Maybe it was the start of something else, something neither of us were ready to name yet. After that morning, things between Ethan and me changed, but not overnight. It was subtle, like the air got thicker around us, charged with things unsaid. We still shared the apartment, the kitchen, the living room, but now every touch felt heavier. Every glance lingered a second too long. I caught myself watching him when he wasn't looking, the way his hands moved when he cooked, the way his jaw clenched when he was thinking hard, how his eyes softened when he laughed. And Ethan? He wasn't exactly hiding it either. One evening, about a week after, the bed incident, we were sprawled out on the couch, half watching some music documentary, half avoiding eye contact. The wine bottle between us was empty, and the room smelled like stale popcorn and sandalwood candles Ethan insisted on lighting. Without warning, Ethan shifted closer. Just a little. His knee brushed mine. Not a big deal, right? Except it sent a jolt up my leg that I couldn't ignore. I glanced at him. His eyes were fixed on the screen, but his body told a different story. Tense, like he was holding back a question he desperately wanted to ask. Then, before I could say anything, he reached over and nudged my hand with his. "Sorry," he said, voice low, almost embarrassed. "Don't be," I said, heart racing. That touch was tiny, but it exploded inside me. We stayed like that for a while, fingers barely touching, both of us daring not to pull away. Later, Ethan got up, stretched, and paused by the doorway. "Hey," he said, glancing back. "Yeah? Thanks for staying. It means more than I thought it would." My throat tightened. "Me too," I whispered. He smiled that crooked, charming smile I'd always loved. And in that moment, something clicked. Maybe it wasn't about labels or rules. Maybe it was just about what felt right. This connection, this closeness, this possibility. The couch had been my starting point. The bed was just the beginning. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind was buzzing with every touch, every look Ethan had given me over the past week. I kept replaying the moment when his hand brushed mine on the couch, and how his eyes had lingered just a second too long before he looked away. I decided to get up and pour myself a glass of water, hoping the cold liquid would calm my racing heart. As I passed the living room, the soft glow of Ethan's laptop caught my eye. He was sitting on the couch, headphones on, staring at the screen like he was deep in thought. I hesitated but then sat down a few feet away, careful not to invade his space, but craving the quiet company. After a few minutes, Ethan pulled off his headphones and looked at me. "Can't sleep either?" he asked. "Yeah," I admitted. "Too much on my mind." He nodded slowly, then took a deep breath. "Look, about that night, when I moved you to my bed, I've been thinking." I braced myself. "I don't want this to be weird between us, but I also don't want to ignore what happened, or what I'm feeling." My heart thudded so loud I was sure he could hear it. "What are you feeling?" I asked, my voice barely steady. He looked down, rubbing the back of his neck. "Confused, nervous, but also something else. I don't know if it's friendship or something more, but it feels like the latter." I swallowed hard, feeling a rush of relief and hope. "Me too," I said. "I've been holding back because I thought it was just me. I didn't want to mess up what we have." Ethan smiled, a genuine, soft smile that lit up his whole face. "Maybe we don't have to mess it up," he said. "Maybe we just see where this goes." I nodded, feeling a warmth spread through me. "Yeah, I'd like that." We sat there in the quiet, the night wrapping around us like a promise. For the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe I wasn't alone. The days that followed felt like walking on a tightrope. Every interaction between Ethan and me was loaded with this new electric energy. Fragile but undeniable. One evening, we found ourselves cooking dinner together. I was chopping vegetables, and he was stirring the sauce. The apartment smelled like garlic and basil, warm and inviting. For once, the silence wasn't awkward. It was comfortable. As I reached to grab the salt, our hands brushed. A tiny touch, but it made my skin prick. I froze, glancing sideways at Ethan. He looked back, eyes wide, a small, nervous smile tugging at his lips. "Hey," he said softly. "Hey," I replied, heart thumping. Without thinking, he reached out and gently took my hand in his. The roughness of his palm against my smooth skin was grounding. For a moment, nothing else existed but that touch. His thumb brushed over the back of my hand, slow and deliberate. I squeezed his fingers lightly. "Been wanting to do that for a while?" Ethan admitted. Voice low. "Me too," I whispered. We stayed like that for a long time, fingers intertwined, leaning into a quiet understanding. The couch, the bed, the midnight talks, it all led to this. Neither of us said what we both wanted to, but it didn't matter. The first touch was enough. After that night in the kitchen, things between Ethan and me shifted faster than I expected. We started spending more time together, not just hanging out, but really being close. Movie nights turned into long talks about our pasts, fears, and dreams. I found myself opening up in ways I never thought I would. And Ethan? He listened. He cared. One late Friday, we were lying on the couch after a rainstorm had passed. The city smelled fresh, and the room was dim, except for the soft glow from the streetlights outside. I was half asleep when Ethan shifted next to me. His hand found mine again, but this time, he didn't just hold it. He pulled me closer, his chest pressed against mine. Warmth radiated from his body. I looked up at him, heart racing. "Are you sure about this?" he asked quietly. searching my eyes. I nodded, words failing me. Without another word, he leaned down and kissed me. It was soft, hesitant at first, like testing the waters. Then, deeper, urgent, full of all the feelings we'd been holding back. My hands found his hair, pulling him closer. The kiss wasn't just about desire. It was about connection, trust, and something neither of us had dared to say out loud. When we finally pulled apart, Ethan rested his forehead against mine. "This feels right," he whispered. "It does," I agreed. That night, we crossed a line we couldn't uncross, and neither of us wanted to. The morning after felt surreal. I woke up wrapped in Ethan's arms, the sunlight streaming through the blinds, casting patterns on the bedspread. His steady breathing was the only sound in the room. For a moment, I just lay there, letting the reality sink in. This wasn't just a random night or a passing thing. It was real. It was us. I turned to look at him, his face peaceful, a small smile playing on his lips, even in sleep. I felt a swell of something I hadn't allowed myself before, hope. When he woke, we didn't rush to define anything. We just held each other and talked quietly about everything and nothing. Ethan admitted he'd never thought about being with a guy before, but with me, it felt natural, like discovering a missing piece he didn't know he was searching for. I told him I'd always liked him more than just a friend, but was too scared to say it. We laughed at how long it took us to figure it out. Over the next weeks, we found our rhythm, balancing friendship, attraction, and the messy, beautiful process of falling in love. Sleeping on his couch turned into sharing his bed, and eventually sharing so much more. What started as a favor became the best decision I ever made. Because sometimes the best things happen when you least expect them. The morning light filtered softly through the blinds, casting warm stripes across the room. I woke slowly, cocooned in Ethan's arms. The rhythm of his breathing was steady, a quiet comfort that anchored me after the whirlwind of the night before. For a moment, I just lay there, letting the weight of everything settle. The night hadn't been just a moment. It felt like a turning point. The way our bodies had fit together, the tentative kisses, the whispered confessions. It was as if we had stepped into a world that neither of us fully understood but both wanted to explore. Ethan stirred, blinking sleepily. His eyes met mine, a flicker of something shy and uncertain beneath the usual confidence. I smiled softly and reached up to brush the hair from his forehead. "Morning," I whispered. "Morning," he replied, voice husky from sleep. "You okay?" "Better than okay," I said honestly. "Still can't believe last night actually happened." He chuckled quietly, running a hand over his face. "Me neither. I've been trying to figure out what it all means ever since." I propped myself up on one elbow, studying him carefully. "What do you think it means?" He hesitated, then said, I think it means I'm not as straight as I thought I was." I blinked, surprised by his candor. "Really?" I asked, a hopeful note creeping into my voice. "Yeah," he admitted. "I mean, I've always dated girls and never really questioned it. But with you, it's different. It feels right, you know?" I nodded slowly, my heart swelling with relief and affection. I've felt the same way for a long time. I was just too scared to say it. His smile grew wider, the kind that crinkles the corners of his eyes and makes your stomach flutter. "Good," he said, "because I'm not ready to let you go." We spent the morning wrapped up in each other, talking about fears and hopes, about what the future might look like. It was messy and honest, the kind of conversation that cements something deeper than just physical attraction. Later, when we finally got up, the world outside seemed brighter, more promising. But reality has a way of creeping back in. Over the next few days, I found myself caught between the thrill of our new connection and the lingering fear of what might come next. Ethan and I were navigating uncharted territory, and sometimes the uncertainty was overwhelming. One afternoon, as I sat on the couch scrolling through job listings, Ethan came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my shoulders. I leaned back into him, savoring the warmth. "I'm scared," I admitted quietly. "Of what?" he asked, his voice gentle. "Of ruining what we have, of things getting complicated." Ethan kissed the top of my head. We'll figure it out together. That promise was enough to steady me. But then came the moment I'd been dreading. The inevitable question of what we would tell our friends, our families, the world. One evening, after a quiet dinner, Ethan looked at me seriously. "We can't keep hiding," he said. "Not from ourselves, not from anyone." I swallowed hard. "Are you ready?" He nodded. "I think I am." The weight of that admission settled over us like a promise and a challenge all at once. Together, we were stepping into something new, not just a relationship, but a life that neither of us could have imagined. And as scary as it was also exhilarating. Because sometimes, the greatest risk is the one worth taking. The days after Ethan's confession felt like walking a tightrope between hope and fear. We had taken a step forward, but the world outside our apartment still felt complicated and intimidating. I couldn't stop replaying our conversation. Ethan saying he wasn't as straight as he thought. Me admitting the same. It was freeing but also terrifying. What did this mean for us? For our friendships? For our futures? We tried to carry on as usual, but every glance, every touch, held unspoken questions. One evening, I was at work when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Ethan. "We need to talk." My heart sank. I called him immediately. "Hey," he answered, voice tense. "What's up?" I tried to keep my tone casual, but inside I was bracing myself. "I told one of my friends," he said quickly. "About us." I froze. "You what?" He sighed. "I know, I should have told you first. I wasn't thinking." She asked why I'd been acting different, and I didn't want to lie. The silence stretched between us. "How did she take it?" I finally asked. "Surprisingly well," Ethan said. "She was supportive, actually. Said it's brave." I felt a mixture of relief and anxiety. Relief that someone close to him accepted us. Anxiety about what would happen next. "We need to be careful," I said. "Not everyone will be as understanding." "I know," Ethan replied. "But I want us to be honest, with each other and with people who matter." That night, when I got home, Ethan was waiting with a nervous smile. "We're in this together," he said, taking my hand. I nodded, feeling the weight of what lay ahead. The following weeks were a roller coaster. Some friends were surprised but supportive. Others were distant, unsure how to react. At work, I kept things private, but the fear of being outed loomed. Through it all, Ethan and I leaned on each other. Our relationship was no longer just about late-night touches and whispered confessions. It was real, messy, and raw. One rainy afternoon, as we sat by the window watching the world blur past, Ethan turned to me. "No matter what happens," he said, "I'm glad I moved you to my bed." I smiled, squeezing his hand. "Me too." Sometimes, the biggest risks lead to the most beautiful rewards. And this was just the beginning. The season shifted, the city changed, but Ethan and I grew closer with every passing day. What began as an accidental night on his couch, then in his bed, had blossomed into something neither of us could have predicted. We learned to navigate the complexities of our relationship, the questions, the doubts, the moments of vulnerability, and found strength in each other. One chilly evening, bundled up against the biting wind, we walked through the neighborhood, hands entwined like a secret we were no longer afraid to share. Ethan stopped suddenly, pulling me into a quiet side street lined with bare trees glowing under streetlights. "Remember when I moved you to my bed that night?" he asked softly. I smiled, feeling the familiar warmth of that memory. "How could I forget?" He looked at me, eyes shining. "I was scared. Scared of what it meant, scared of losing you as a friend, but also scared of what I wanted." I cupped his face gently. "Me too." He laughed, a soft, genuine sound that made my heart swell. "But I'm not scared anymore," he said. "I want us. All of it." I nodded, the promise of a future together filling me with hope. That night, back at his apartment, we sat side by side on the couch, the same couch that started it all. Ethan reached over, taking my hand, his thumb tracing gentle circles. "This is home now," he said. I squeezed his hand, knowing he was right. Home wasn't a place. It was a feeling. warmth, safety, belonging. It was us. And no matter what the world threw our way, we had found something real. Something worth holding on to. Because sometimes, the best stories begin when you least expect them.